Okay, so in this lab number 4, it's the SPSS selection and transformation of data. We're going to go over a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about measurement scales, selecting a subset, transformation of data, selection of data, where we will compute a new variable, so we'll create some new data. And then we'll talk about how we can recode a variable and make it that look like a different variable, if you will. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is measurement scales. So I know that we talked about this in our lecture side of things. This is the nominal, ordinal, interval ratio. This is our scales of measurement. And SPSS can delineate between those different scales of measurement, but they just call it scale for interval and ratio. So they do have nominal, and that's for our just kind of categories or name variables. Then ordinal has like that rank, if you will. And then, like I said, they just slump interval and ratio into one variable or one scale called scale. It has like a little ruler there, if you will. Now, now newer versions of SPSS will allow you to indicate which type of data you have when you define your variable, and you can do that in the measuring column. So I'm going to show you how to do that later on in this PowerPoint. But yeah, just keep in mind there's 4 types of measurements: nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio, and just kind of keep in mind that if you ask it to do something, though, SPSS will conduct any analysis, even if it's not appropriate for that data. For example, if you have them calculate the average of if you're a morning person or a night person, it doesn't work because there's no average of, you can't be kind of a morning-ish person, right? If half the people in your class are morning people and half the people in your class aren't morning people, you can't take the average of that. All right, so let's see here. With what to do about, so, and I'll show you, like I said, how to set those scales of measurements. Okay, so if you click on measure, right, you just click on that little part of it, the little gray part of it. It'll let you, choose which one you want. If you want it to be like a scale, again, that's interval and ratio, ordinal, and nominal. Okay, so what to do about missing data? So often participants don't provide complete data. If they're doing a survey or a questionnaire, they're going to leave certain things. Sometimes they'll leave certain things blank. So for example, for some students, you may have a pre-test score, but then maybe not a post-test score. You might have a post-test score, but not a pre-test score. And perhaps one student left a question blank on a survey, or perhaps he or she did not state her age, or whatever it is, right? So often a single missing answer actually can eliminate that subject or that participant from all analysis, especially if it's a vital score. So what you do in any case that you have missing data is you leave that cell blank. You don't enter in guesses. You don't enter in averages of what you think. You don't enter in the low one to be on the safe side or the higher one to, to kind of bolster your numbers. You just leave it blank. And it's going to look like you have a period there, a little dot there. Don't enter in a period. Just leave it blank. Okay. So often we have more data in a file than we want to include in any kind of specific analysis. So for example, our sample data file contains data from 4 participants, 2 of whom received special training and 2 of whom did not. If we want to conduct an analysis using only the 2 participants who did not receive the training, we would need to specify that in an appropriate, what we call, subset. And how we do that is we can select the cases, right? So you go up to data, and you go down to the select cases, right? So I have a little arrow there. And when you select this command, the dialog box will open, and you can see the little icons there, right? So if you select it, you'll see the little icons. So this one, the grade is on an interval, or yeah, the interval, but they have it as scale, right? So again, do you work? Yes or no. That's just more of a nominal thing. Did you receive the training? Yes or no. It's more nominal, right? Okay. So you select a subset. So let's see here. Yeah, you can specify which cases, in this case, our participants or our students, you want to select by using the selection criteria. Okay, so again, this is the select cases dialog box, and by default, all cases will be selected. Right, so you really have to say which of the cases you don't want selected, because if you don't, if you notice here, the little radio button has it selected. The default is to select all cases. Okay, so let's see here. So what you want to do, so the most common way, and the way I do it, is to select a subset is to click on if condition is satisfied. Right, so I'm going to go to the next one here. So if condition is satisfied, and then you click on if, right? That's because what you're doing is you're saying, I want to really drill down and make it so they just look at this specific type of participant. And then you have to enter in the logic, right? So you enter in the logic used to select the subset in the upper section. Okay, so you say in this one, I want to do the day of class, right? Monday, Tuesday versus, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday versus Tuesday, Thursday. So what you do is you would click on that and then click the little arrow, and then it'll go over just like we did in our last video. Okay, yeah, so right, so the Monday, Wednesday, Friday one was 1, and the Tuesday, Thursday one was 2. So if day is 1, then the statement will be true, and SPSS will select that case. If day is anything that other than 1, in our case 2, the statement will be false, and the case will not be selected. And once you've entered in the logic statement, you just click continue. Okay, so again, I'm just clicking on day of class, and that goes over there, and then I click continue. That way it knows which one I want to have, right? I'm going to go back up just one there, right? So day would be maybe 1, right? 1 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, so after we select the cases, our data will be slightly changed. If you notice, you'll see the little diagonal line through the case numbers, right? So in our example here, the first and third cases are not selected. Only the second and fourth cases are selected for the specific subset. Okay. So in addition, you'll also notice you'll have a file underscore money side right there, right? So this little arrow is pointing to that. That's the new thing that's saying. And so it tells you in a couple different ways, right? So the subset remains in effect until you run that command again and select all the cases. And you can really tell if the subset has been selected because the bottom part of your data window will, one, indicate the filter is on. In addition, when you examine your output, the n will be less, right? See how the n is now 2 instead of 4, and the diagonal lines, right? So you really have 3 ways of telling that the subset is still there. 1 in the data window, 2 little lines of diagonal lines, and 3, your n will be less than the total number of participants in your study. And this is your output window, right? So some people like to save all their output windows. That's fine. Some people just close them out and they don't save them because they're going on to the next analysis. Okay, so when you're computing a new variable, always remember to start in variable view, not data view, right? So in this one, we're going to start a new data set, and we're going to have quizzes. So we're going to have 4 participants, and you're going to start entering in their data, and we're going to have enter in something for quiz number 1, quiz number 2, and quiz number 3. So again, you're always going to start in the variable view, and you're going to click over to data view to enter in the participants' data. Right, so start in variable view, put your variables in. In this case, it's the quizzes. So when you click over to data view, you start entering in the data for the participants, right? So here are student number 1 on their first quiz, they scored a 3. Student number 1 on their second quiz scored a 3. And on their fourth quiz, or on the third quiz, they scored a 4, so they get a little better on that last quiz. If you look down there to our last participant, number 4, started out really weak with a 1, went up to a 3, but then went back down to a 1. Right? Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, so computing a new variable. SPSS can always be used to compute new variables or manipulate existing variables. And to illustrate this, we're going to create a new data file, just like with our quizzes here. And the file will contain data for 4 participants and 3 variables. Again, the 3 variables are the quizzes, and the 4 is the 4 participants, our 4 students. Okay. Let's see here. So now to calculate the total for each subject, you can do it manually because I know it's just a little bit of numbers, but if the data file was larger or there were a lot of questions, this would take a long time. So it's definitely more efficient and more accurate to have SPSS compute the totals for you. To do this, you're going to click on Transform. So you go all the way up to the top of your screen there and click on Transform, and then you click on Compute Variable. Okay, and after you click on Compute Variable, you should get a new dialog box, right? So this is what the dialog box should look like. And the blank field marked Target Variable, right? So this one right here, Target Variable, I want you to type in the words like total, right? Because we want to find out the total scores for our participants based on, what quizzes they took. And then, so over on the right-hand side is the numeric expression, right? So the target variable is the total, and then you say, okay, well, what do I want my total to be, right? So in the numeric expression, you're going to type in, well, I want it to be the total of quiz number 1, quiz number 2, quiz number 3, right? So my total right here is going to equal all the quizzes put together for my participants, okay? Okay, and then when you press OK, right, you're going to get your output window, and you can confirm that it does say compute, right, total of quiz number 1, quiz number 2, and quiz number 3. This is your intended equation, and the output in this output box should just open for you. Okay. When you close it or save it, you should see a new columns listed there. The total column there is what's happening is SPSS is adding up 3 plus 3 plus 4 to give you 10. Right? And it's going to do that for each one of the participants that quick. So whenever they say SPSS is like Excel on steroids, this is what they're talking about. It goes so quick. I know Excel could do it this quick too, but SPSS is awesome because we can do different statistical analysis. Let's see here. Okay. So switching gears just a little bit. Now when we talk about recoding a variable, or making it like a different variable, what we're trying to do now is group participants. Okay, so maybe I want to say, well, I want to take some participants that didn't do very well, and they're going to go to a mandatory study group. And then I have another set of participants that did really well in the quizzes. They don't really need to go to a study group. So I'm going to group them. I'm going to group them into group A being like, one thing, and group 2 or group B being another thing. So I'm going to group participants, and how I start that is I click on transform, then I click on recode into different variables. Okay. And then I have to say, okay, when this new dialog box opens, I have to say, okay, what do I want to recode? If I just want to recode what they did in quiz number 1, I click on quiz number 1. But I want to see who needs extra tutoring, who needs to go into study groups, right? So I'm going to click on total and then move it over, because that's what I want to recode it for. I'm looking for how do I recode the total number or the total scores for them. Okay, so the total's there. So now on the right hand side, you'll see something called like output variable right here, right? So now what I want is I want to define that. Well, I'm going to say, I'm going to have mine be groups, right? So I'm going to type in the word group. And then I have to click on change, this little button here, to make it say this, right? So total, so sort my groups by the total number for their quizzes. And I click, okay. I'm sorry. Then I click old and new values. Okay, so I have to define what those groups are going to be made of. Okay, so the first one is I want to do the highest one, right? So if I click on range, comma, value through highest, I enter 9, because that was like the highest score that anybody got. So that'll be the top one they can do. Okay, and then it's going to be in group 2. And then I'm going to go add, right? So I click in 9 for the range, comma, value through highest, and under new value, I click in 2, because that's going to be my group number 2. Right, and then I click add, and it should show up in this little thing right here. Okay, now to make my second group, I list 8. So lowest value, and then the value is going to be set as 1, and then add. Right, and then I click continue, and it's going to give me another output window. Okay, and what I can see now is, okay, what I want you to recode SPSS is if anybody scored 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 for their scores, put them in group 2, because they're not going to go into tutoring, or they're not going to go into a special study group. But if you add up all their quiz scores and their highest score was like a 7 or a 6 or a 4, right, put them in group number 1. So anything less than 8 goes into group number 1, anything higher than 9 goes into group number 2. Okay, so then you go back, you close out that window or save it, and it should give you this new group right here, and it says, okay, so on the first day or on the second day of class, when they take all these quizzes, you can say, okay, everybody in group 2, you're over here. Everybody in group 1, you're over here. It's a really quick, easy way to sort your data into subsets. Okay, so for your weekly lab assignment, again, I do have another video on me walking you through the SPSS, what we just did here in the PowerPoint. I want you to add in more quiz scores, so add in some more participants with some quiz scores, and then take a screenshot and send it to me in Canvas. Thank you.